Welcome to The History of Before Now. In this debut episode, we'll uncover the fascinating story of the United States, from its earliest days to its rise as a global superpower. Let's dive into the rich tapestry of events that shaped this remarkable nation. The first inhabitants. Long before European settlers arrived, the land we now know as the United States was home to a diverse and thriving population of indigenous peoples. These early inhabitants lived in harmony with nature, building rich cultures and societies that reflected their deep spiritual connection to the land. From the towering totem poles of the Pacific Northwest to the cliff dwellings of the Pueblo peoples in the Southwest, Native American tribes demonstrated remarkable ingenuity and resourcefulness. They developed advanced agricultural techniques, created complex trade networks, and adapted to a wide range of environments, from deserts to dense forests. Tribes such as the Cherokee, Navajo, Sioux, Iroquois, and Apache each had unique traditions, languages, and governance systems. The Iroquois Confederacy, for example, established a sophisticated democratic alliance that inspired some of the ideas later incorporated into the U.S. Constitution. These communities viewed the land not as something to be owned, but as a shared resource to be respected and nurtured for future generations. This worldview stood in stark contrast to the one brought by European colonizers and set the stage for significant cultural clashes in the centuries to come. The age of exploration and colonization. The 16th and 17th centuries were marked by European powers seeking to expand their influence across the globe. In 1492, Christopher Columbus's voyage to the Caribbean set off a wave of exploration, leading Spanish explorers to settle in Florida, New Mexico, and California. Their missions to convert native populations and extract resources had a lasting impact on the region's culture and economy. Meanwhile, the English, French, and Dutch also sought to claim territory in the New World. The English established their first permanent settlement in Jamestown, Virginia, in 1607. Overcoming early challenges like starvation and conflict with indigenous tribes. The French focused on fur trade in Canada and along the Mississippi River, forming alliances with Native American tribes and intermarrying with them. This era of colonization set the stage for future conflicts and cultural exchanges in North America.
The American Revolution. By the mid-18th century, the relationship between the American colonies and Great Britain had deteriorated. The colonies, having been settled for over a century, had developed their own identity, distinct from the British. However, the British government continued to impose taxes and laws that the colonists found unfair and oppressive, such as the Stamp Act and the Tea Act. These policies, along with the lack of representation in Parliament, created widespread resentment among the colonists. The situation escalated, and by 1775, the first shots of the Revolutionary War were fired at Lexington and Concord. The colonists, led by figures like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin, banded together to fight for their independence. The Declaration of Independence, signed on July 4, 1776, was a bold statement declaring the colonies' right to self-governance and their break from British rule. The document, primarily written by Jefferson, was rooted in Enlightenment ideas about liberty, equality, and the pursuit of happiness, laying the philosophical foundation for the new nation. The Revolutionary War would last for 8 long years, but in 1783, after the signing of the Treaty of Paris, Great Britain officially recognized the United States as an independent nation. The war had not only given birth to the nation, but had also inspired revolutions across the world as people began to fight for their own rights and freedoms. The ideals of the American Revolution, freedom, democracy, and self-determination, would go on to shape the future of the nation and the world. Expansion and conflict. The 19th century was a period of rapid expansion for the United States. Following the victory in the Revolutionary War, the nation was eager to grow its territory, and the idea of manifest destiny emerged. The belief that it was America's divine right and duty to expand across the North American continent, from the Atlantic to the Pacific. One of the most significant events of this era was the Louisiana Purchase of 1803. The United States bought a vast expanse of land from France, doubling the size of the country and opening up new territories for settlement. This was followed by the annexation of Texas in 1845, the Oregon Trail, and the Mexican-American War, which led to the acquisition of modern-day California, Arizona, and New Mexico. But this westward expansion came at a high cost. Native American communities were forcibly removed from their lands to make way for settlers, often through violent means. The infamous Trail of Tears in the 1830s saw the forced relocation of thousands of Cherokee and other tribes to Oklahoma, where many perished along the way. The government's policy of Indian removal left deep scars on indigenous cultures and populations that continue to be felt today. The Civil War and Reconstruction. The Civil War, which lasted from 1861 to 1865, was one of the most defining moments in American history. At its core, the war was a struggle between the northern states, which had largely abolished slavery, and the southern states, which relied on slavery for their agricultural economy. The southern states, fearing that the federal government would abolish slavery, seceded from the Union and formed the Confederate States of America, leading to the outbreak of war. The Civil War was brutal, with over 600,000 Americans losing their lives in combat and from disease. The war's turning point came with the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863, and by 1865, the Confederacy was defeated and the Union was preserved. President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 declared that all slaves in the Confederate States were free, signaling the end of slavery in the United States. However, the end of the war did not mark the end of the nation's struggles. The period of Reconstruction, which followed the Civil War, sought to rebuild the South and integrate formerly enslaved people into society. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution abolished slavery, granted citizenship, and protected voting rights for African Americans. Despite these legal advancements, the South remained deeply divided, and the process of Reconstruction was fraught with resistance, particularly from Southern whites who sought to maintain their power through segregation and the imposition of black codes. The Reconstruction era ended in 1877, but the legacy of racial inequality persisted. The Civil War and Reconstruction shaped the social, political, and economic future of the nation, setting the stage for future struggles over civil rights and equality.
The modern era, the 20th century, was a transformative period for the United States, marked by rapid industrialization, global conflicts, and social movements. The Industrial Revolution spurred economic growth, but also brought labor unrest and inequality, leading to reforms. The U.S. emerged as a global power after World War I, with its role solidified by victory in World War II. Post-war prosperity led to a booming economy, but racial inequality remained. The civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s fought for racial justice, achieving landmark legislation. Technological advancements, like the moon landing in 1969 and the rise of the Internet, reinforced America's global influence. Despite challenges like the Great Depression and the Cold War, the U.S. emerged as a superpower by the century's end. though it faced new issues in a changing world. The 20th century reshaped the nation's identity, laying the groundwork for the complexities of the modern era. Thank you for joining us on this fascinating journey through history. Don't forget to subscribe to the History of Before Now to stay updated on our future episodes. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What topics should we explore next? Let us know in the comments below. See you in the next video.